Over 10 years ago, McDonald's objected to Irish fast food restaurant Supermac's efforts to trademark its name in the EU on the grounds it would cause confusion around McDonald's Big Mac brand, which that company had already registered. In 2017, Supermac's applied to the EU Intellectual Property Office to revoke McDonald's trademark on the grounds it had not made genuine use of it in the previous 5 years. The appeal was partially successful, but the office ruled McDonald's still had the protection for the Big Mac trademark relating to meat and poultry products and regarding operation of restaurants and drive-through facilities. This is what Supermax appealed to the General Court of the European Court of Justice, which today issued its ruling. It stated that McDonald's had not proved genuine use within a continuous period of 5 years, but McDonald's retains the use of the Big Mac brand for meat products, but not for other products or food serving facilities. The news was welcomed by Supermac's founder, Pat McDonough.
They had
Welcome back to another breakdown video. I am your host, Dave. Almost Senior Intellectual Property, dealing with everything from trademarks to patents to trade secrets, copyrights. And this is an interesting one. First of all, the term, and we're going to continue to finish out the video, but the term Super Mac kind of gives me the McDowell vibes and Coming to America for all my Eddie Murphy fans who checked out Coming to America. So pretty much we're going to, so this is a decision that happened in Europe, but I'm going to tell you the importance of it and how it can affect McDonald's here in the U.S. So it seems like McDonald's, when a company, they get these brands protected, these different marks and logos and things like that protected, they not only protect them here in the U.S., but they also protect them abroad. In this case, the EU, which is the European Union, all the countries that are in Europe that are part of the European Union, they were able to protect the brand, specifically a Big Mac, in the European Union. So I guess what happened is you have this brand Super Mac, which appears to sell hamburgers and chicken sandwiches and things like that. They're trying to trademark the term Super Mac. However, since McDonald's had a trademark in the EU on the term Big Mac, they prevented them from being able to do it. So essentially in 2017, it seems like Super Mac got fed up and said, okay, we're going to court about this. Now McDonald's actually won, it seems like, in a lower court about, okay, just being able to prevent Super Mac from trademarking the term Super Mac because of the word Mac in the word Super Mac. And then what happened is Super Mac, they appealed it, and the Court of Appeals, which in this case overturned the lower court's ruling. So just to give you an idea of how this thing works, and this is very similar to how it works here in the US, when you file a trademark, you have to file that trademark in the classes that you're doing a business in, or the class that you're operating in. So for example, in McDonald's case, it seems like they trademarked it in Europe for restaurant services, for sandwiches, or sandwiches, as well as for poetry or food items. It seems like maybe outside of like sandwiches and things like that. So again, which we all know, at least for me personally, you guys have to let me know in the comment section, have you ever saw McDonald's use the word Big Mac on anything outside of the actual hamburger, this actual sandwich? I have never. Only way or only thing that I've seen McDonald's use the term Big Mac on was relating to their sandwich. And I actually love the Big Mac back in the day. I haven't had one in a long time, but hey, back in the day growing up, I used to get them joints with just the meat and the cheese. I used to kill that thing back in high school, but I haven't had a Big Mac sandwich in a long time. But nonetheless, when you trademark your term, you have to get it in the class that you're operating in. And again, in McDonald's case, at least in Europe, they got it in restaurant services, for poultry, or it seems like food other than hamburgers, as well as these hamburgers or sandwiches. See, so those seem to be at least three of the classes or categories that they were trying to protect the word Big Mac in. And ultimately, the court in Europe, the appeal court, said, hey, McDonald's, we're going to allow you guys to use the word Big Mac as it relates to food or hamburgers, sandwiches, things like that. However, you guys can't protect the word Big Mac for restaurants. So again, just think about restaurant services. So McDonald's, we all know McDonald's is a restaurant. Those restaurant services. So when they're protecting the word McDonald's, they're protecting that word in the restaurant services, that class. So that means nobody can open up a restaurant word that's named McDonald's or anything. At least here in the US, we call it the likelihood of confusion. Anything that's confusingly similar to McDonald's, you're probably going to be in trouble. And I would imagine that Europe has the same type of laws, whereas, hey, if you open up a restaurant that's similar to McDonald's, and McDonald's has that trademark in there, trademark for the restaurant services, you're going to be in trouble. And the reason I'm going over this, and I want you guys to kind of pick this up, because you have to actually use your trademark continuously. It's different from patents and it's different from copyrights, where you can just get a copyright, you can get a patent, you can actually sit on it. They don't let you do that, at least not here in the US. And it seems like Europe has a similar rule where you can't just sit on a mark, because in the US, a trademark lasts forever. Now, a patent, utility patent, at least lasts for 20 years, and the copyright lasts a life of the author plus 70 years or 75 years. However, a trademark lasts forever as long as you're using it. So you can't just get a trademark and sit on it in a way that you can just get a copyright or get a patent and sit on those. And even though, the courts generally don't like that, you can do that. It's legally allowed. However, in trademarks, you can't just get a mark and sit on it. You have to use it or else you lose it. Use it or lose it. I know I actually got a call this past week where a gentleman, I'm not going to say the name, that he wanted to finally protect after using it for 40 years without registering it. And I'm like, hey, man, it's actually a company name. A company has a registration on that name. He's like, I don't care. I've been using it for 40 years and I have protection on it. And I'm like, all right, no, we can file for a trademark on it, and maybe you will, maybe you don't. But at the very least, it's not going to be an inexpensive measure. But the whole thing was, I was telling him also about, hey, have you been continuously using this thing for 40 years? So if you were using this thing in the 80s and then in the 90s, you took a break, or in the early 2000s, you took a break, that's not continuous use. And the court is likely not going to give you a trademark going back to the 1980s because you haven't been continuously using it. And he kind of swears up and down that he's been using it since 1980 continuously. But again, the court said this, and then I'm not sure if they said it in that first clip, but they're definitely going to say it on the back end where, hey, McDonald's, you haven't been, even though we gave you a registration for that term, but you haven't been continuously using the word Big Mac for restaurants or for other food products. You've been continuously using it for sandwiches, and therefore we're going to allow you to still protect that term and prevent others from trademarking that term as it relates to sandwiches. But when it comes to restaurants, or when it comes to what we say sound, and when it comes to other food, so if somebody's selling fish or chicken that has the word Mac in it, you haven't been using it outside of this sandwich, this hamburger. So we're going to allow other people to kind of get up in that space as it relates to restaurants and as it relates to other food products. But this sandwich that you've been continuously using the term Big Mac for over the last X amount of years, we're going to allow you to protect it. And that's essentially what the trademark is for. That's what the ruling of the court, the appeals court in the EU, the EU came to the conclusion of. So let's finish out this, and I'm going to show you how this applies to the U.S. case, because it's very important, because they may be in trouble here in the U.S. as it relates to the same thing. So let's finish this off, and I'm going to let you know how this applies to the U.S.
In excess of 800, I think, was Mac registrations across the EU, which prevented basically anyone from registering anything to do with Mac.
So this is the CEO of Supermac. This is the CEO of Supermac talking. He's saying, hey, look, man, based on, well, prior to this ruling, McDonald's was coming after you if you tried to register anything that had the word Mac in it as it relates to food at all. McDonald's will come after you. And that's essentially what the CEO of Supermac, which is a restaurant that sells hamburgers, chicken sandwiches, things like that. That's what he's telling the camera here. So let's get back to it and see what he's saying.
Be it a brand or be it a product. And so therefore, I think that this decision is a decision that helps the small guy. It was basically a David versus Goliath scenario.
In a statement, McDonald's said the decision by the EU General Court.
So he's saying it's a David and Goliath. Then look, and I wouldn't take it that far. I would say the decision makes sense. And to the extent that you're using this thing continuously for, if you got the term registered and you're using it continuously in a way that you're registering it or that you have it registered, great. So in other words, hey, you got this thing registered for a number of different classes, and if you're using it in those classes continuously, then you can continue to protect it. But if you can't hoard it, I was actually at a store the other day in corner store getting some items, and it was this lady. She was in her car, and I was going in the store, and a gentleman was coming out the store, and we both just kind of looked at the lady car. And this, I mean, again, this was like a sedan hatchback, and literally the passenger side was filled with papers up to the top. The rear row was filled with papers up to the top. And the hatchback area, the trunk area, was filled with papers up to the top. This lady was a hoarder. I can only imagine what her house looked like. Me and a gentleman just kind of looked at each other and looked at the car. And we just like bust out laughing because it was like, wow, this is crazy. Literally, the only thing that you can see, it was only one person able to fit in that car, and that was her, the lady driving. You cannot see the floors in this car. Literally, you have papers and things and garbage and stuff like that packed to the top of the car, which was obviously a safety hazard. But I'm saying all this to say that you can't just register terms and not use them. You have to use them if you want to continuously protect that term. McDonald's seems like they registered the term Big Mac for a restaurant, even though they're not calling their restaurants Big Mac. They registered the term for restaurant services or for sandwiches and for like poetry in general. And the only thing they were using this term Big Mac in was for hamburgers. They weren't using it for other food products or other for restaurants. They wasn't calling restaurants Big Mac. They were just hoarding these terms and going after people who tried to kind of play in these areas that they had the terms registered. So that's essentially what was going on. Let's read this statement and finish this video. And then again, I'm going to show you how this applies to the U.S.
Or does not affect their right to use the Big Mac trademark. The Big Mac is loved by customers across Europe, and they will continue to serve local communities as they have done for decades. If there is no appeal, this decision from the ECJ immediately allows Supermax to register its brand in the EU, as it had planned to do since 2015. Meanwhile, in the UK, which is now outside the EU, a separate dispute with McDonald's.
So shout out to RTE News. It seems like it's a news company out in Ireland or in Europe. So shout out to them for bringing us this story. It seems like Supermax, they came in the EU and they've been operating, but they haven't been able to register the term Supermax. It seems like based on this lawsuit or this judgment that came down from the Court of Appeals, they are likely able to get it for the restaurant services. At least it seems like they're using a brand for their restaurant services, as you saw there. And it seems like they may be able to register the term Supermac for restaurants, because McDonald's is not calling their restaurants Big Mac. Obviously, we all know that they're calling them McDonald's. They're not calling it Big Mac. But you have to check out the spin job that McDonald's tried to do, because they're trying to say, hey, this doesn't affect us being able to use the term Big Mac. We'll continue to bring you guys the term Big Mac is, as people have loved our product for years. And that's partially true. They can use the term Big Mac, obviously, for sandwiches, because they've been doing that for a number of years, for decades. However, now they can't stop others from coming into the market if they're calling their restaurant Super Mac in this case, or any type of restaurant name that has the word Mac in it. And if somebody's trying to sell food items that's not hamburgers that includes the word Mac in it, McDonald's can't come after you. So that's essentially, in summary, what the lawsuit is. And I want to kind of bring you guys how this affects here in the U.S., because if you look at, there we go. Now, if you look at the Big Mac, this is the test database. So if you go to USPTO.gov or type in Google, in the Google search bar, TESS, the test database, this is where all the trademark registrations in the United States are housed. So when I typed in here Big Mac, and as you can see here, these are registered terms by McDonald's Corporation, which is Delaware Corporation. So they have it in restaurant services, they have it in essentially clothing, and they have it in sandwiches class 46 and sandwich for consumption on or off the premises class 30. Now, the importance of this is, I think they're going to be okay if somebody tried to challenge them in the U.S., or if Supermac, for example, came to the U.S. and tried to open up a restaurant called Supermac. I think McDonald's is going to be okay still being able to protect the term Big Mac for sandwiches, whether it's sandwich for consumption on or off the premises, or just sandwiches in general, which is class 46. I have never seen any clothing that had the word Big Mac on them. So I think Big Mac for clothing is in jeopardy. And I think restaurant services, this restaurant services was exactly what the US, what the EU said, what the Court of Appeals in the European Union said, that they cannot protect, they haven't been using the term Big Mac for restaurant service. They've been using it for sandwiches, but not for restaurant service specifically. They haven't been calling restaurants Big Mac. So essentially, the appeals court in the European Union said others can come into this domain and use the word Mac, whether it's dealing with just food in general outside of what McDonald's uses it for, which we all know is the hamburger, or others can use it for restaurant services. So again, this word specifically, I think the term Big Mac, which is a registered term that McDonald's got registered, I would imagine many decades ago, this is in jeopardy, class 42. I think if somebody was to challenge this, I haven't seen McDonald's using the term Big Mac for restaurant services, essentially calling a restaurant Big Mac. Obviously, they use it for calling sandwiches Big Mac. I haven't seen them calling, patties, selling, and they may still be good with selling, sandwich patties and calling them Big Mac, which that still is up in the air, but definitely not just food in general, chicken, fish, other food items, and being able to, they haven't been calling those food items Big Mac. So obviously they can't do that here in the US, but for the restaurant services that you saw, class 42, I think that's in jeopardy based on this lawsuit or this appeals court decision in the EU, in the European Union. So let me know what you guys think about this. Let me know in the comments. Please hit that like button if you like this type of content. Please hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed this this type of content. I'm going to continuously try to bring you guys these current events from the IP standpoint, IP perspective. In this case, this was a trademark, and I thought this was actually a good one. We all know McDonald's, and some of us loved it, some of us hated it. I was a big fan. I respect McDonald's from the what they built as a business as it relates to the food. Obviously, I don't really do at this point in my days, but again, this I think is relevant for anybody here, especially in the US. If you're trying to open up a restaurant and you had the term Mac in it, typically McDonald's will go after you because they have this term Big Mac trademark. However, in light of this appeals court decision in the EU, I think you may be able to kind of challenge that decision and say, hey, they haven't been using this term continuously for restaurant services, and therefore, if we have Super Mac or whatever, Little Mac or whatever brand or word that has the word Mac in it, we should be able to do it for restaurant services, and also maybe for clothing, maybe for other food products, because McDonald's is not using this term Big Mac in those areas. Again, it may be registered, but they haven't been continuously using the term Big Mac in those areas. So let me know what you guys think. Until next time, peace.